Hi, my name is Maggie Hoffman. I'd like to welcome you to my second installment for my G&H, or Gross National Happiness series. I'd like to introduce my father, who is my audience today. I'd like to recap. What we talked about the last time was GDP. GDP being gross domestic product, and how we evaluate ourselves in other countries by this as a metric of wealth, not a metric of well-being, which is what G&H, or gross national happiness, is. Gross national happiness is, in fact, more measurement of well-being regarding ecological factors, regarding cultural factors, all sorts of different factors, and our opinions on these things. My specific intent with all of this and with addressing this is that I believe that it is the responsibility of the state and federal governments of the United States to adopt and practice surveying for gross national happiness, that people may not only pursue happiness, but that we may know also if we are happy today. I would like to begin with a quote, and it's a quote that several people know, and yet several people seem to overlook quite often. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that all men are created and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, the governments are instituted among men, that they derive their power from the consent of the governed, that whatever form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government laying its foundation on such principles and organizing it in such a form as to them shall seem most effective to their safety and their happiness. Now, this brings us to our first concern, one of three major concerns with gross national happiness. Happiness is a subjective criteria. It is something that varies in opinion from person to person and government to government. Now, what makes gross national happiness less subjective and more objective is that it is a survey, that it is a more quantifiable method of attaining evidence for how we view those things that make us happy or unhappy. Statistics such as divorce equating to happiness or unhappiness, crime equating to happiness or unhappiness, these factors come about, and these results, built up over time, survey after survey, begin to develop a great picture of what it is that we view ourselves to be, happy or unhappy. Now, this requires something quite major involvement. We have a hard enough time getting people to vote right now. While this is a concern, there are things that are in fact mandated, like our current census. Our current census is something that is only ever taken once every 10 years. And the questions are pretty basic. Who lives here? Is anyone away? What are the ages of those people? But what if we mandated our census to have certain questions like this? Certain questions that may be optional, certain questions that we feel we can register an opinion on or don't want to at this time. But what if we started to accumulate this picture? What if we encouraged ourselves and one another to do this, to build up a picture of how we're doing, whether our wealth has anything to do with our happiness at all? With this involvement and with this kind of questioning, these personal questions, brings the very last concern. Can we trust our government with this kind of information, with personal information? Personal information that talks about our family, that talks about how many people we have in the household and how we feel about them, how we feel about marriages overall, how we feel about ourselves spiritually. These are matters that perhaps we can trust to our government, but what if we can't? What if we feel like this is something they don't need to know? That might say enough about how we are being governed, how we feel we are being governed. Can we trust them to really help us pursue our own happiness? This is something that has been a premium in the United States and has become a premium for countries the world over. And it is my great hope that with these steps, we may begin to build a bigger picture of our happiness. I'd like to thank you for your patience. I would like to thank my father for being my audience, and cannot wait to finish this up with talk number 4. Have a good night.